world's a stage.
Once again, for the Skull-Filled Talks podcast, here's your host, Phil Green.
Hello, welcome to another action-packed episode. So we've had two shows so far where it's been a little bit wacky, a little bit unplanned, and I've just ranted on about some of my thoughts and opinions. So it's time to kind of touch base on quite a... When I say it's a serious topic, it is a serious topic, but I can't approach it seriously because that's not how I deal with it. So like the title says, behind blue eyes, depression and anxiety. So I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown on an ongoing battle. Well, it's not really a battle, it's just an ongoing issue. Maybe that's the best way to look at it. However we look at it, it's an ongoing problem for me. And that is, I suffer with severe anxiety and severe depression. I have suicidal thoughts. I've attempted suicide before. And like I've said before, they also think that there's potentially something on the autism or Asperger's scale. The initial test shows that I'm on the scale, but the actual confirmation test is about a 3-year waiting time for it. So, where do we start? Right. I could go back to my childhood and try and pick apart that to try and give you some backstory, but I don't think I'm going to. What the best thing for me to do is probably go back to, say, when I was 15, 16 and I left school. Oh, let me get comfy. Oh, wiggle around like an idiot. There we go. So, you got to remember, none of this is scripted. It's all out my noggin as it goes. I don't do take after take after take. I do one take because I'm a lazy bastard. So, well, there goes that for not being explicit for iTunes. So, about as far back as I can remember, but like I say, we'll go from when I left school and kind of entered the land of work. I've always approached myself as though I've had a very short fuse, if that's the right way to put it, and that I maybe get wound up easy, maybe have a short temper or a fiery temper. Now, about 18, 19 months ago, this, what I thought was a short fuse, started transpiring into something a little bit more serious. It's hard to explain what an anxiety attack is. And at first, when I started having them, I honestly did not realise that that's what they were. I think that the first few that I had, it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like my inside body temperature felt as though it was rising. Couldn't stop it. And my hands would get clammy. And my heart rate would start racing. My breathing would go really shallow. Now, whilst all this is happening, there's the other side of it where your head starts, your head starts going into like a spiral. It's weird. And after a couple of these getting quite serious, and when I say quite serious, I mean to the extent where I was in floods of tears, ready to break down. I was just, my head would go. I'd be sat there with my hands on my ears, begging whoever was with me just to stop talking, stop having a go at me, stop. I mean, they didn't even have to be having a go at me, but if someone set one of these attacks off, then it didn't really matter. I'm going to try and get through this without breaking down. So I went to the doctors, explained what was going on. I had to go back 2 or 3 times, and he asked if I'd ever suffered with depression. Now, up to that point, he was, other than a brief stint in the army, he was the only person I've ever really admitted to that. I believe I've had depression for quite a long time. I've always been able to manage it. I've always been very mentally aware. I've always been able to go inside my own head and sort it out. But unfortunately, because of these what turned out to be anxiety attacks becoming more and more frequent and quite severe, I lost the ability to kind of keep a hang on the depression as well. It was about this sort of time I developed what I like to call as suicide Tourette's. It seemed quite funny to myself looking back on it, but I could be having a conversation with someone, I could be sat there next to someone watching telly, I could be on my own, I could be driving, and all of a sudden, one phrase came out my mouth. I want to die. There was no conscious thought behind it, it just kind of happened. It was like my subconscious was pushing it forward, and I had no control over that. It didn't matter who I was with or where I was, it had just come out. Now, I found it quite hard at first to deal with all this, and things started to get ahead, and the suicidal thoughts started getting more and more. The anxiety attacks went through the roof. They got to a stage where I was keeping a diary so I could go back to the doctors and say, I had 2 last week, or I had 3 last week. Well, it was getting to the point where I was recording maybe in excess of 10 or 15 a day, and that was a good day. So, as it kind of grew its course, the doctor put me on a drug called propranolol, which is a beta blocker designed to stop anxiety attacks, or at least reduce them. And he did the worst thing that you can ever do. And I know he's a fully qualified doctor and all the rest of it, but the directions for these anti-anxiety drugs or beta blockers was to take one as and when needed. Now, you see, the irony with that is when you're having an anxiety attack, the last thing on your fucking head is, oh, I'm having an anxiety attack, I best take a tablet. With mine, anyway, when I was having one of these attacks, it wouldn't be until I kind of got over it and I started reducing back down to normality that I'd actually realised that I've had an anxiety attack. Now, it might, I don't know, it might sound to some people like it's not a great, you get a bit panicky, you get a bit sweaty. It's not like that at all. When I have anxiety attacks, I could go one of many ways. Either I could lash out if someone's put me in that position, or if my head takes me that way. I could break down where I am, and by break down I mean as a grown man, sitting, kneeling on the floor, crying my heart out, or I just have to stop what I'm doing and I've got to get away. The last one was primarily if I was in a supermarket. All it'd take, I mean, this is the weird thing, all it'd take is maybe 1 or 2 people to barge into me or just to walk straight in front of me, and that'd be it. The cycle started. I couldn't stop it. It's a runaway train and you're just holding on for dear life. And the only way to maybe not stop it, but kind of alleviate it or to let it pass without affecting me too much would be just to walk straight out of the supermarket. Just get back to my car and sit in my car. So we'll fast forward a little bit. I ended up seeing, I've mentioned it before, I ended up seeing a paramedic practitioner, I think it was, and he put me on a drug called sertraline, 50 milligrams a day, wasn't a great mass amount, and he also got me booked in to have an assessment with a mental health specialist. I was waiting for this appointment to go to this mental health specialist. I believe I saw the paramedic on the Friday. Well, Sunday, I got a phone call, can you come to us now and we'll do an assessment, blah. And I said, yeah, absolutely. And I went down, and bless the poor woman. I mean, don't get me wrong, she looked like she could handle herself, but she just got everything unloaded. Absolutely everything. All about the suicide, attempts of suicide, the suicidal thoughts. I explained to her I've planned it. I had a cut-off point, which some of you may know and some of you won't, but my cut-off point was April. So in April, that was it. That was when I was going to do it. And that all come about because I'd promised myself when I started getting help off the doctor that I would give myself some time to get better. Some time to actually work and fix whatever was not right. And in my eyes, April, at that point, it from when I was making these decisions, it'll have been about April, May. It'll have been about April, May. So it'll give me 12 months to basically work on it. So I give her all this information, and she asks some questions like they do. And one that always makes me laugh it always makes me giggle, is she sat there and she went, "Can you tell me, do you ever see things that aren't really there?" And I kind of looked at her and I thought, how would I know that they're not there if I can see them? And she looked back at me and smiled and went, "That's a very good point." So that was quite a bit of a giggle. But I've got to be honest with you, I've laughed and joked. I was laughing and joking with her on that day, and I believe I also cried on that day. Do you know, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. Through the people that I've met, and the people who in my life I know suffering with stuff like this, I have a very hesitant view when somebody says, "Oh yeah, I've got depression," and then acts moody. That generally isn't not only my experience, but it isn't the experience that I've seen through a lot of other people. And talking to professionals, it generally isn't the case. It's generally the people who are suffering with mental health, from the outside, they look like functioning people. They'll look like there's not really a great deal wrong. They'll look like they're happy with life, but it's what's going on behind the eyes. So I'd been open and honest with her. And she said, "Look, basically, I think you need to go under the home treatment team." She used the term home treatment team. Later on, I found out it was the suicide crisis response team. Look at that for a mouthful. So I redesignated them to suicide squad. And she explained that there was a specialist community mental health team, but they don't take every case. They might take your case, but they'll have to review it. It could be up to 3 months before you hear anything, but you will hear something. There you go, piss off, see you later. By the time I'd left her and got to my car, she rung me and said, "Right, the home treatment team, the suicide response team, will get involved with your case. However, we might need you to... and the community team, they'll take your case." So that, like, literally within the space of 3 minutes, it had been agreed that they'll take my case. I got in the car, and before I reached home, she rung me back again, and she went, "Right, look, they'll take your case. Can you come to Miranda House, which is a nut house, for an initial consultation with the specialist, blah, blah, blah." I went, yeah, absolutely. When do you need me? Wednesday. So all this is happening in very, very, very quick succession. So I went there. Spoke to a doctor called Dr. Fofi, who was a clinical psychiatrist, quite high up, I believe, and ran through some stuff. He found it quite entertaining that I'd done so much research on how I was going to kill myself, and it was quite a unique way. I was going to use helium, because basically your body doesn't reject it. So the molecules of helium are accepted as though it's oxygen when you breathe it in, and basically you just go to sleep and don't wake up again. If you do wake up, you're either going to have absolute tremendous brain damage or a squeaky voice for a couple of hours. But either way, the plan's to not wake up. So I had this meeting, and he said, "Look, up to this point, nothing had been set in stone, nothing had been confirmed." He was the first person that said to me, "Look, you've got some deep-rooted depression. I can tell just by some of the things that you're saying and some of the symptoms that you've presented." He then straight away put my sertraline up to 150 milligrams a day and put me straight with the suicide squad on, I believe it was 3-day visits. So every 3 days, suicide squad would come to my house and meet with me. I ended up where I started going to them and meeting with them, but that's by and by. And it was working on every 3 days I had to see suicide squad. I come out of that meeting being told, "Yeah, you need to see the specialist team, you need help, you need this, you need that. If you feel like you're going to commit suicide, ring this number. If you feel like this, you need to ring us, you need to..." And it wasn't until then I realised the severity of how ill I really was. But there's a happy ending to that day, because about 3 hours later, I spoke to my girlfriend at the time. We'd been together like 4 years or something, and explained to her what had gone on very briefly, because she was in a bit of a rush. She just wanted to tell me that we was finished, because she didn't want to go through this with me. Which, like I say, the weird thing is I didn't have many external symptoms, other than maybe if I opened up to someone and I started talking about it, or unless I had an anxiety attack and I couldn't control it. So she dumped me that day as well. So that was a good a good encouragement to keep going. So anyways, that's by and by. Not really too fussed, to be quite honest. Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side. Moving forward a little bit, I kept up my meetings with the suicide squad, and I ended up getting a worker who I won't name, but she was absolutely amazing. To say, the weird thing is the Humber team, the home treatment team, are actually part of the NHS, although they work alongside of the NHS, and you can really tell because the people that work there are really, really passionate about the job. And I mean like super passionate about the job. For the simple fact, I was only supposed to be under him for 6 weeks, and this individual kept me for 6 months, purely because the waiting time to get to the community team. I kept getting put back because I was classed as functioning because I was working. And we all know that if you're working, then you must be functioning, because obviously it's only people who are on dole who get depression. Bollocks. There's a lot of charlatans as well, as I know from my bailiff days, but we shan't go into that and my bitterness about how these people are raping the system, so genuine people can't get the help they need. That's by and by. So working through with the suicide squad. Now this individual could only go so far because they're not really there to start working on the more intimate and deep problems. But we kind of established that my depression went back to probably early teens. The anxiety's probably been there all the time, but it's just for whatever reason it's just flared up, and the two together has just kind of pushed me over the top. This is where the mention of maybe some form of like OCD or something like that got mentioned, and then after some deeper looking into it, it was suggested that it'd be more along the Asperger's scale. So I actually did the NHS online test to see where I sat on that, and spoke with the individual, the suicide squad, about it. There's weird things. So there's also stuff called sensory perception, which is to do with how somebody perceives the world and the outside world. Something daft. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been barefooted. So even now, the second I get in from work, boots come off, socks come off, and I'm barefooted. And it don't matter if I've got to walk in the garden, if I've got to go into the kitchen, anything, I'll be barefooted. I feel comfortable as anything. Sometimes at work, if I can, boots and socks will come off. If I'm sat on a break, then I go back. And it's really weird. The test that I did, it was, I don't know, maybe 40 questions. Weird stuff like, do you always put sauce on your food? And just really out there things. But do you know, when it come back, it said so much about me. It was unreal. That's kind of where I was. Now, at the start of April, I'm kind of jumping a bit. I need to go back. So a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I tried to open up to, who I thought, or who said was there for me no matter what. So I took that. I needed help, and I'm not ashamed to say that. The majority of them turned their back on me, whether it be through, I don't know, maybe they didn't like hearing what I said, or maybe they just... The mark of a true person is how they deal with stuff when somebody's in need. You get to... What's that saying? Something about find out who your real friends are. I very quickly kind of scaled it back, and it was during a meeting with Suicide Squad. I used to go and see my worker and literally just sit there for an hour just waffling at her, and she'd maybe nod, say the odd one or two things, write a few notes, and that was about it. But what it was me talking to myself. So I started doing that more and more actively, hence the reason why I started these podcasts, because it's one massive way how I get a lot of what's in my head out, and me doing that makes me realise a lot of stuff. It kind of helps me process it. So I come to a point where I was very, very alone. My parents, to all wants and needs, they were there for me. I know they're there for me, but I also know that there wasn't, in a way. It's hard to explain. I don't know, maybe they was frightened. Maybe they didn't want to get involved because they couldn't register it. I don't know, but that's my mum and dad. They have that right, and I'd never hold that against them. It can't be an easy position to hear your son tell you that he wants to kill himself. I had people telling me that they loved me, and then when I was reaching out for help, I didn't hear off them for weeks, months. So what I did was I started realising very quickly one of the quickest things I could do is cut people out of my life. And I kind of made an active process of removing individuals out of my life. And that's still going on today. Before all this happened, I had unlimited loyalty to pretty much anybody. I'd do anything for anyone, try and help anyone that I could. If somebody needed something, I'd be there for them no matter what. And everybody had my trust. Now I've started to realise that there's kind of two circles to it all. There's my outer, right, so all my friends are in a circle. And then I've got an inner circle. Now, there's two people in that inner circle. And they're people who have been there, haven't judged me, have been there at 6 o'clock in the morning because they've seen a status or because of how I've responded to a text message. They're on the phone. And I'm not selfish. I don't expect that off anybody. But when somebody does it off their own back, because that is how I would measure a friend, because that is what I would do for another person. Either of them two, I'm there for them implicitly, in a heartbeat. I started speaking to these two friends a little bit more. The friends that you can go with, I might not see them for a year, and they're still there. They're still friends. I still love them to bits. You know, one of them is an individual who has his own battles with mental health, but he's also someone who I look up to very highly, and he kind of gave me the, I don't know how to explain, how to put it so it doesn't sound too harsh, but he kind of gave me the like the frank look at it. If somebody pisses you off, don't bottle it in. Tell them to fuck it off. That sort of like that advice that kind of like picks you up initially. You know, that advice that kind of gets you stood back. His advice picked me up off the ground and stood me back on my feet. And then my other friend, who, well, he's just that laid back. Any further laid back, he'd be 6 foot under. But I love him to bits. And we met up after some messages exchanging. I mean, these messages were like, well, they were like essays, but every word was, I don't know, it was like every word kind of unlocked something inside my head. So we met up for a coffee, and a quick coffee turned into sitting there for 4 hours. And everything he said to me resonated. It was as though he could look inside my head and say, if you feel X, Y, Z, and it was, I mean, to the word, exactly how I was feeling, even at that moment in time, then why not look at it like this? Why not look at that like that? And what he did was, the first friend stood me back up on my feet, and he came along and showed me how to walk. And I know that might sound a bit pamby-ish, but that's kind of what happened. And one of the main things that he taught me was, you enjoy your own company, yes. Well, who says that you have to be with loads of people all the time? And I started thinking, well, yeah, that's right. So you've worked out you've only got 2 or 3 close friends. So has everybody else. If they tell you any different, they're lying. They don't know the difference between mates and friends. That's the best way that we was kind of discussing. And I thought, do you know, you're absolutely right. So he said, well, look, you've got a disorder, so all right, you might not want to be sociable all the time. You might like your own company, but you also enjoy learning stuff and going deep into stuff and using your brain, and this is where the Asperger's bit came from. He said, but what's wrong with that? Go with it. If you want to do something, do it. If you want to learn something, learn it. Don't stop. So, I mean, when we talked about so many aspects, I aren't going to go through every single aspect that we talked about, because that's twice I've hit that now. It's because I'm nervous, I'm sweating, I'm clammy, even talking back about some of it. But yeah, if I went through it all, the podcast would be about 3 weeks long. But he kind of, the baseline of it is, he said, forget about everybody else, forget about society, forget about the rest of the world. You need to look on the inside. Because you can never be happy. You can never be positive. You'll never move forward until you love yourself. And I don't, by that, it's not standing in the mirror, touching up your hair or plucking your eyebrows or looking extremely handsome like I do. But that's so far, well, yeah. It's when he says love yourself, and when I'm talking about love yourself, it's accept yourself. Do you know, realise that sometimes you don't have to be the same as everybody else. And I think the bit what I was struggling with more than anything is, very much like him, I think I'm quite on the extreme scale of it. I'm very different to a lot of other people. And I think I spent, well, the moment, the clarity that I had was I realised that I'd spent 17 years, because like I say, I go back to when I left school. So 17 years being somebody who I wasn't, living behind a false front. And that's, when I realised that, it was like, I mean, I don't know how to explain it because it's just going to come off like I'm some sort of God squad. But it was like I'd woken up for the first time. How does that sound? But that's how it felt. It felt like I walked away from that coffee, from that conversation. And I walked away, and it was like I was on cloud 9, because I realised, you know what? Yeah, I am different. Yes, I have got depression. Yes, I have got anxiety. Yes, I do contemplate killing myself quite regular. Yes, I've attempted it. I'm comfortable with that. And so then I started looking, this is where I started cycling through certain people. So certain people came back, or attempted to reinstate themselves back into my life. But you see, the difference now was, I had a bit more clarity. I had a bit more grounded on my thoughts. And it was weird. It was like I could look at people, work out, maybe not necessarily what their good points and bad points was, but I was starting to see two sides to people. And it was very, very strange. It was a very strange, like, awakening. And I started noticing with people. And when I thought that, maybe when somebody said, I love you, I listened to that. But then I was also able to kind of work out, no, you don't. What you really want is X, Y, and Z. When a friend said to me, oh, it's been great to catch up. And I'd think, yeah, it has been good to catch up, but... And I can see other ways of people. Now, there's people in the outer circle who I'm still working out that they may be our true friends and they should be in the inner circle. But look, this is a work in progress. But the one thing that I've got to do is stop anybody who doesn't deserve to be let in, who doesn't deserve to be held close. They ain't getting in. And that's how it's got to be. Now, when we left that coffee meeting, I used to listen to a Buddhist monk called Ajahn Brahm, and he's got absolutely loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of videos on YouTube. But I used to listen to him all the time, and it's weird because I went back and I thought I was feeling kind of that sort of enlightenment, that sort of, I don't know, energised sort of feeling. So I thought, do you know what, I'll whack Ajahn Brahm on, see what he has to say about stuff like this. And it's weird, I typed in Ajahn Brahm, and the first one to come up was learn to be at peace with yourself. And well, I'm going to play it for you. We're going to go out to this, and I'm going to finish it off, but I'll play this and then it'll go to the closing music. But I know I've kind of scooted through it, but I want it recorded. I want it there in the list of podcasts, so that if anybody comes along, or if anybody like joins the show when we're on episode 50, it's there. It's recorded. You know, I've got no shame at all in my mental health. The upsetting thing I think about is I have no shame when it comes to my mental health. I just feel sorry for all those people that were in my life who have shown that they are ashamed of me because of my mental health. Because they won't come back into my life again. Or they might do, but they won't ever be as close as there was before. Anyway, this isn't going to be like a bitter rant. So, look, I'll stick this on from Ajahn Brahm, and I shall boogwire off. So, here he is, the crazy bald guy.
And then the improvement happens, then the problems get solved. It's counterintuitive to many people in the West, but it is what has worked for centuries in the East. Learn to relax and be at peace with yourself, accept yourself as you are. And then you find that the problem gets solved. So it's all about changing the attitudes which we have towards our life. And somehow or other, somehow the Western world, and I say this as a Western-born person, has been just so into progress and development and not really recognizing just what we already have. There's a basic saying of Buddhism, which, if you're going to learn any Buddhism, you don't need to learn lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of theories. You don't need to read all the books, thank goodness, because there's heaps of them. All you really need to do is understand what those books really mean. And that saying is, when you want something more, you can't enjoy what you already have. You can't even appreciate what you already have, because you're not looking at what you already have. You're way over there wanting something more, to develop the next addition to your house. How many more rooms do you need in a house? My house has only got one room. I live in a cave. It's beautiful. It's so simple. It doesn't take long to clean it up, and even I don't need to clean it up. Someone cleans it up for me. Out of compassion for the cleaner, I only have a small room. Imagine you go home tonight and you've only got one room, and that's all you have in your house. Oh, what bliss. You don't have much to clean up. You can't have many possessions because you can't fit them in. You don't have to spend all your life saving up and paying off the debts to build these huge mansions in which you live. Look at how we live these days. You live in mansions which even kings 100 years ago would not be able to live in. They're so huge and big. Why do we do that? Because it's what everybody else does. And sometimes we need some people to say, what on earth are you doing? Can't you actually look at things in a different way? Small is much more beautiful. And also, I never expected to actually go on this, but those of you who were privileged, were fortunate to be poor when you grew up. You had to share rooms with your brothers, sisters. Sometimes people say they had to share the same bed with 4 or 5 siblings. Yeah, you may not have got much sleep at night, but you sure had a lot of fun together. And you learn how to love one another. It's one of the things which, because I was poor, I spent my whole life in the same room with my brother. Only one bedroom we had to share. We didn't have private bedrooms. And those of you who've seen my brother, we love each other, we get on. Even he was a banker, I was a monk. You couldn't get sort of 2 more diverse careers than that. But, we respect each other, love each other, to this day. And I often say, well, why was that? Because we had to get on together. And now you give separate rooms to all your kids, huge mansions, which means that we don't learn how to get on together. We don't learn how to love. We don't learn those attitudes of life. So I always think small is incredibly beautiful. It's great for the economy, great for not wasting all the resources of our planet, bad for the building industry, bad for the government, bad for the GDP, but really great for human happiness. Small, close together, learning how to get on, because you have to. So changing attitudes like that is part of my life. It's being a bit rebellious, but why not? And one of the biggest attitudes which I...
Alright, so that was Ajahn Brahm. I'm going to leave it there, guys. We'll probably touch on this again at a later date, and I'll keep you updated with how it goes with the... I'm going to have to... I'm sorry I keep hitting stuff, but it's been one of them recordings where I have been a little bit nervous with it, and just thinking back through certain aspects of it kind of brings some of the emotions back. But I'm getting there, and like I've said, anybody else who has mental health issues, get in touch. I'd rather sit in a room full of people who are got Tourette's, who are schizophrenic, who are bipolar, who are suffering with depression, suffering with anxiety, people who lick windows. Do you know, I'd rather sit in a room full of them people than the majority of the people I pass on the street who are just sheep, who are just carbon copies of everybody else. They just want got to get the next big TV. Do you know? Got to get this car, got to have this house, got to have that, got to have this, got to have that. You've got to have fuck all. Just learn to be good people first. Unfortunately, there's not many of them around. Right, guys, so I'm going to say bye-bye. Au revoir. I love you all. Go fuck yourselves, and welcome to the family, motherfucker.
Thanks for listening. Visit skullfilled.com to stay up to date and support the show. See you next time.